How about mine? Can you tell mine? Okay.
Missy, how about mine?
Sound check, sound check.
Test, test.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Test, test, test.
I heard that.
What about you?
Testing
Missy,
1, 2, 3.
Missy, will you test Elizabeth as well?
Elizabeth, if you can hear us, can you unmute yourself and test your mic?
Can you hear me? Testing.
Perfection. Thank you.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing.
Test, test. Sorry, I'm a little slow. Sheesh.
I thought you meant on Zoom.
Can you hear as well? Okay, so now we'll mute again.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now can you hear me? But I'm not talking, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, we'd like to open our study session here for the Murray City School District Board of Education. And thank all those who are attending via Zoom. We have opted to do it through a more complete Zoom meeting to ensure that everything can be heard much better than what has been traditionally done with our microphones up on the stand. So hopefully that will work much better, and that everybody who is listening in will be able to hear us in a much better tone, and also minimize any feedback that might occur. We'd like to welcome everybody who's in attendance and listening in live. We appreciate everyone that is available to participate. To begin, I'd like to read an opening statement, and then we will proceed after that opening statement. Superintendent Covington would like to have an opening statement. First of all, the Murray City School District Board of Education would like to thank all of you, parents, educators, administrators, and others who have reached out to express your feelings and offer support. We want to ensure you that the letter and comments have been read and pondered by members of this body. Due to the large volume of communication, it was impossible to respond to or engage with everyone. However, your opinions do matter, especially at times when there is sharp disagreement. Your feedback has been echoing in our minds for the past several weeks, and will be carefully considered as we continue to discuss these issues today and in the days ahead. We all come at these issues from different lived experiences. And while we as board members may not agree on some of the finer points of this discussion, we all come at this with the same objectivity as you. We all care about our students and have their personal growth, confidence, and achievement as the lens by which we will make decisions. As a result, we believe this common ground demands our collective efforts to understand, respect, and demonstrate civility. This is critical to our path forward, but also is a model of behavior that should exist in all public discourse. Our students are watching, and we need them to be proud of our ability to come together in difficult times. We can do this. There's no better example of that than our experience this past 12 months. As we were the first school district in Utah to close on March 12th, appropriately, Murray was also the first school district to welcome students back on August 17th. Wading through months of theories, feedback, ideas, together we developed a return with care plan that has proven durable and flexible for all families. Many will recall there were disagreements and frustrations in getting there, but in the end, we came together the Murray way. Looking back, Murray has been a model district in the state. Our ability to manage the pandemic crisis, we boldly moved forward when it was time to take that first step. We've pivoted as adjustments were warranted, and we've dreamed and innovated in ways that no other district in the entire nation has dared. This is no small miracle. It has taken the collective efforts of this entire community to pull this off. Today, we are faced with another challenge. Given our track record, we believe once again, we will rise to the occasion. It is another of our finest hours, and we as a board are proud to work shoulder to shoulder with amazing parents, students, and educators to show once more why we are Murray. For clarity purposes, we have elected to meet as a board on March 4th to address and take formal action on what we discussed today. Our normal March 11th board meeting will be scheduled as planned, and the agenda for that meeting has yet to be determined. We will take public comments for the March 4th and March 11th meetings. Superintendent Covington.
Thank you, Board President Cooper. On behalf of the Murray City School District and the administrative leadership team, I would like to express my thanks for the feedback our parents, educators, administrators, and students have provided. It is evident that although not everyone has the same opinions, we all care deeply about our children and want what's best for them. And that's a great place for us to begin our move forward, as this is our most precious shared value. We are committed to providing welcoming and inclusive places and spaces for all of our students and families so they can confidently participate and receive everything that makes Murray a unique and special learning experience. Every child deserves to feel supported, loved, and seen. This goes hand in hand with their right to a quality education that is second to none. I would like to thank our professional and caring educators who love your children and work every day to establish classroom communities that are inclusive and foster positive interactions among students. Our educators have proven time and time again their commitment to optimize learning that embraces understanding and individualized student needs. Their development is a product of countless hours of formalized study, individualized continuing education, and the collaboration of best practices among colleagues to understand each child's lovely uniqueness. This is paramount to our educators' success and our growth as a district. As a district team, we have listened and deeply considered all points of view. We honor and respect them as they come from a place of love and concern. We value them as they have given us pause for thoughts that have directed the recommendations we will discuss tonight. And we appreciate and embrace the opportunity to stand and prove once again why we are educators and why we are Murray. Thank you for giving us this challenge and opportunity to review our policies and procedures. We are better for having done so, and will move forward with greater transparency, parent involvement, and a model that creates a sustainable, safe, and positive climate and culture for our entire community. It is our hope that as parents and educators, we can rally together rather than pitting ourselves against each other for and in behalf of all of our amazing students in Murray City School District. Thank you, President Cooper.
Thank you, Superintendent Covington. We'd now like to go to our second item, books read at Horizon Elementary, and I believe Principal Whitney will address this, Principal Anderson.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for letting me be here with you guys today. I wanted to take a minute and share with the board the details surrounding the book that kind of kicked this whole discussion off, the book Call Me Max. This book was read in Mrs. Paul's third grade classroom on Friday, January 8th. I just want to give you the details of that and then open it up for any questions that you might have for me. Friday after school, I was contacted by a parent asking about a book that was read about a boy named Max who used to be a girl. I was not aware of a book by that description being read, so I told the parent that I would look into it and find out what happened. After talking to Mrs. Paul, I found out that the book Call Me Max was brought to Mrs. Paul by a student in the class. This student asked if Mrs. Paul would read it. Mrs. Paul read through the book herself and then shared the book with her class. After reading the book, the student who brought the book said, "That's a true story." A student then asked a question about the picture of the author on the back of the book and how he could have a beard. Mrs. Paul answered the question by saying, "Science has made it possible for people to grow beards when they get older." One student shouted out, "I can't wait to grow a beard." Another student shouted out the word puberty, which some other students found to be funny, and Mrs. Paul asked them to stop and they moved on. I asked Mrs. Paul what she thought the class had learned from the book. She told me that the conversations had helped students to feel confident in themselves as well as be accepted. Mrs. Paul felt that students learned to have a sense of confidence in who they are and an ability to accept others who may be different from themselves. This might be different from what you think or you feel, but that's okay, that we're all different and we all have strengths. Mrs. Paul also felt that they had good conversations about differences so that we can learn to understand each other better. In the coming days and weeks following the discussion, Mrs. Paul has heard students saying things like, "I'm a boy, but I like to paint my fingernails," And I'm a girl, but I like to wear boy clothes. This makes Mrs. Paul and I feel proud when students voice these type of statements and own who they are. I hope this explanation of the book being read helps clarify the misconceptions of what happened in the classroom that day. I think in a lot of our conversations and discussions since then, I think it's important to come back to the message of the book and what the students came away with in that classroom, especially the student who brought that book and wanted to share that with the class. Are there any questions specifically about the reading of the book?
Wait.
That button. Okay, fifth time. Ms. Anderson, can you just talk to us a little bit more about the confusion of like where the information came from that we know that a young person brought this book to us? Maybe a little more detail. That's where I probably have got the most questions is, did it come from the teacher? Should the teacher have previewed it? You kind of you answered that, but do you have any more insight into that and where the story contrary came, that it came from somebody else, not a child? I don't know, just any more insight into that, just to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our initial hesitancy to be able to give a clear picture that we wanted to give was the privacy of the student who brought the book. So I would say it boils down to that at the beginning of it, when those calls started coming in, and as we were trying to figure out what had happened and how we can explain what happened and be clear without violating the privacy of the student who brought it. And then in further communication, there got to be a mix up with the books that are on our book bundle lists, and then additional resources and things like that, where we were just trying to be clear and list all the books that we knew of that had been read. And then that's when I think we didn't communicate well enough, as far as this is a book bundle book, this is a book brought in by a classroom, and here's some books that we know of that have been used in class to kind of go towards the goal of creating a Horizon community where everyone is welcome and everyone is appreciated and seen. So does that help clarify?
Any other questions?
You're good.
So do you feel like okay, do you feel like I feel like you have, but do you feel like now you have put all that information and clarified all that to your community? Because I'm not a Horizon parent, I don't get those emails, but my understanding is you've worked really hard to get that information all out there. Do you feel like we're on the right track there?
I do, and I think there's a lot to it, and it's unfortunate that things got convoluted, because it does then shine a negative light almost on programs like Second Steps that we've had for years. Programs like, just everything got mixed as well. We're using these programs to all mix together and to create, and it wasn't that. It was these books. We want kids to see themselves in these books. We want kids to see themselves in the literature that they read, the same way that they see themselves in Second Steps lessons, the same way they see themselves in textbooks. So, and then in sending out a couple other things that were for our planning purposes as a leadership team at Horizon, and kind of themes of what we wanted to talk about each month, those themes weren't broken out like in the chart. It wasn't broken out to where like the list of themes we were talking about as a faculty and then the list of themes that were talked about on the student level. So when that was shared with parents in an attempt to try to clarify, I think we didn't quite hit the mark as far as how we could have explained that when it went out. So we ended up sending it to try and help, and then we ended up creating conversations and questions after that. I hope that I have answered for those parents that had those questions.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Principal Ashton, I have a question. I thank you for coming tonight and to share with us, personally, kind of the historical background of the discussions that we've been led to tonight. A couple different questions. I think we've acknowledged that there were opportunities for us to have been better at our communication with our community and our parents. What have we learned, or what have you learned, I guess, in relationship to this going forward and with respect to the communication process with our students in these sensitive topics?
Yeah, I would say that I feel pretty confident in the book bundles that we had and things that we messaged out early in October, and all those books were posted on our website in October with all the lessons plans that the teachers use. And then in this case where the book was brought in, and then it was kind of something that was unexpected. And then I think in the attempt to triage it and to make sure that we were giving as much information out, that we could have done that in a more organized way. So I think that's my biggest thing, is I think in an effort to get it to them as quick as possible and have that response time be within 24 hours we could have slowed it down and said, all right, what's everything? How can we lay this out better? Because as a parent, I understand that things coming in that you didn't know were out there, it can get very confusing, because this is something that it took us until October to get it off the ground, even in our building, as far as planning it and having those things in place. So I think just lesson learned is to make sure that we are more clear in what we send and how we answer those questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Principal Anderson.
Thanks.
We will move now to our history of the Equity Committee. I apologize, who's accountable to that? Darren, okay, Darren Dean, Director of Support Services, thank you.
Thank you, Board President and School Board. Hopefully I can give you a good, clear summary of the Equity Council and its work. So the Equity Council was started by a small group of educators in the fall of 2019 who wanted to make a positive impact in their schools. The teachers and staff involved in its creation have always been concerned, first and foremost, with the safety, welfare, and belonging of all students. The mission of the Equity Council was to build a diverse, equitable, and inclusive district by providing all students, families, and employees with a community of care and respect. Each council member had personal and professional experiences that contributed to their desire to collaborate on issues of equity, which they strongly believed would enhance the emotional well-being, school engagement, and college and career readiness of students. Understanding that the support of district leadership was critical for success, members sought permission to be recognized by the district as a council. Superintendent Covington allowed the council to serve as an advisory group under the guidance and support of myself, Darren Dean, Director of Personnel and Student Services. All Murray City School District faculty and staff were notified about the opportunity to participate in the council in the spring of 2020. Those who were interested gathered over Zoom and met in May 2020. As interest grew, the council was divided into two bodies, or organized into two bodies: the Equity Council leadership team of 7 and the General Equity Council of 25 plus educators. These bodies worked together collaboratively. At no time was the purpose of this council to exclude parents. The goal of the council was always to involve stakeholders at every level of the school system, including parents and guardians. In fact, increasing parent involvement, adding resources to the district website, starting an equity newsletter, and developing a more formalized structure surrounding council membership were all beginning to take shape at the time the council was placed on hold. While the Equity Book Bundle project has been presented in conjunction with the work of the Equity Council, it is important to note the council did not create, review, or distribute any of the materials related to the book bundles, nor implement any kind of professional development accompanying this project or otherwise. Prior to the hold placed on the Equity Council, each body of the council worked on the following. The Equity Council leadership team worked on the following: planning, organizing, and facilitating all council meetings, collaborating with district leadership on a statement addressing the death of George Floyd that denounced racism and expressed Murray's commitment to cultivating an equitable school system for all students, bringing in community partners and consultants to collaborate with the school board. 3 members presented before the Murray School Board on September 24th in a study session, October 22nd in a study session, and November 12th in a board meeting about the mission, general work, and direction of the Equity Council. Working jointly with district leadership to draft a revised memo to clarify the difference between political speech and nonpartisan human rights. Asking for professional development on inclusion and equity to comprise a portion of yearly educator training. Suggesting the hiring of an equity director for the Murray City School District. Discussing ideas for restructuring the council membership process to address representation, including parent membership, commitment, and duration of service, and presenting at Pride Not Prejudice, an LGBTQIA+ conference for Utah educators, students, and caregivers, hosted by the Utah Pride Center to share about the process of the creation of the Equity Council. The General Equity Council worked on the following, or discussed the following: identifying several topic educators wanted to discuss and address in schools regarding equity. Some examples included unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, trauma-informed practices, books in students' native languages, support for refugees, family involvement, listening and learning beyond one's own experiences, improved accommodation and instruction for students in special education, etc. The General Council contributed to and approved the mission, vision, core beliefs, and group norms for our council meetings. They discussed what kind of professional development and supports educators are in need of. They reviewed and provided feedback on the draft of a memo regarding political speech prior to board revisions and support. They curated ideas for website resource categories for educators and families, and they discussed creating a district-wide equity newsletter. Equity and inclusion are broad topics that require listening, self-examination, and critical thinking. Members of the Equity Council sought to embody these values and put them into action. Their time and effort were volunteer-based, in addition to an already full-time investment in the success and well-being of Murray students and families. These educators truly are committed to making sure that everyone has a place in We Are Murray. It is our hope that Murray City School District stakeholders will continue to engage in this important work. And that's a summary of the council. I'm happy to entertain questions and/or any discussion.
Anyone have a question right off? If not, I have one or two.
I have a couple questions. Am I good? I read through the notes of the equity meeting or the notes of the equity committee that was provided to us. Is that something that is public information or not?
It hasn't been posted publicly at this time, but it could be requested. It is a public document.
Okay. And I did see several times where it did mention the request to bring in parental involvement, to add more parents into the council.
Yes, just as a new council in its infancy, it was, and during the pandemic,
Yeah.
Many of our discussions centered on the structure of the council and involvement. How do we involve parents? How do we involve more teachers? What work would we have them do? We had many, many discussions.
Okay. Thanks, Darren. Mr. Dean.
Mr. Dean, the question I have is, we talked about having parent involvement, and we had not perhaps gotten to the point of extending that parent involvement out to a large degree. There were some, I guess, that were involved early on. My question was, how did those that were involved early on get invited to participate? And what was the plan to add additional prior to us suspending the Equity Council, if there was such already a design plan?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we had finalized any type of a plan. We were just, as the Equity Council got put on hold, we were just having discussions about that. We did have one parent member from Parkside who had been on the council from the beginning, and that's prior to it even coming to a district level when it was requested that they be recognized as a formal council. And that was a Parkside parent, and this council was, it grew out of some educators at Parkside and a couple of other schools. And so that parent was included as part of that and has been to the majority of the meetings. But we hadn't figured out any mechanism or plan of how we were going to implement including parents, other than that was something we wanted to do. We wanted to have a diverse representation on our council, and certainly we wanted parents to be part of it.
Thank you. The next question I have, I think you said that that the bundle books were not yet set to be rolled out. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm not sure if I can remember exactly how you stated it, but my understanding is that several of the other schools within our district had already also obtained those book bundles. And so my question is, what was the next step plan then? If they had already had the book bundles in the schools, how are we going to then communicate to our staff? If they are, I'm assuming they probably knew, but what was that plan? And also, what was the plan to communicate with parents as we started to roll this out? Because obviously I don't know that it sounds like we were not fully engaged in rolling it out, although maybe at one school we were a little farther along, except that I'm not sure if they read some of those books or not intentionally out of the book bundle yet or not. And that's probably the second question I have.
So,
And do you want me to jump in? And are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm more than happy to share the mic with Missy as well, but I feel compelled to answer because I'm also the ESL director. And I actually, because of the events with COVID and the civil unrest, reached out to the state level and asked for money. And that money then went to our schools to give them a budget so that they could have diverse books. And the charge that was given to them was simply to ensure within their schools that kids could see themselves and see themselves in those books. And the discussions that happened there were along multiple lines. The grant came from ESL, but they were given the freedom to say, what will those books look like? As they moved that forward, that was given to the principals, by the way, over the summertime. As they moved that forward, there had been work done in other districts, and many of the principals had already purchased books of this type. And so the principals worked together and then either went back to their staff to say, are we looking at our libraries? Are we looking at our classrooms? What books would we like to put into our schools? So it was a collective and cooperative effort to come up with other titles. Along the way, we also had opportunity to have training from some people who shared book rooms, if you will, that had books that spoke to many of our families that were refugees, that were Black American, that were Indigenous, or families with two moms, those kinds of things. So again, the titles were shared widely as far as where those were at. And again, I know that they sought guidance from other districts as well with those. So I don't think that Horizon was ahead of the game. In fact, I think most of our schools had already purchased those books as well. And the conversations that happened with PTA and their community councils and their parents. But I think each of those schools may have been a little bit different in that respect as well. And Missy, do you want to add to that?
So just to offer clarity on that, excuse me, what Mr. Dean said was that the Equity Council didn't create the books. They didn't have the plan to roll out the books. That was not in their purview. Crystal clear, that was not an Equity Council charge at all. They, of course, they're supportive of that. They're supportive of having books and diverse titles in their libraries, but that was not an Equity Council charge. That was not something that they developed.
So the book bundles that were developed, those were collaborative during the summer with this grant, just to make sure to provide resources to our principals, our teachers, and in the schools, correct? Is that fair to say that?
Mm-hmm. And yes, and I would like to, in essence, unbundle said book bundle, because the book bundle was a bunch of titles that were developed and housed at Horizon. And then there were so Liberty also, I mean, all schools across the country get titles and add them to their libraries, add them to their classroom libraries, add them wherever they add titles. Every school district, every school adds titles to their libraries. So as part of this additional money, because we get library money anyway, as part of this additional money that Robin got from the state, the charge with that money was add diverse book titles to your libraries. And so, for instance, Liberty chose to add these diverse titles to their library. Horizon chose to buy these diverse book titles and kind of share those titles, bundle them, if you will. Each school handled that differently, but not every school bought those titles. Not every school did that. Some schools did and bought others. So I think that's really a point of clarification that has been really muddied in a lot of noise. So if with permission, I'm going to unbundle said bundle, because there's a lot of confusion there that got really firestormed out. So every school across the country, and especially in our district, we buy book titles all the time to add to our libraries. We have a budget for that.
That's actually a really good clarification. And I'm wondering if it got all muted, stuck together because it happened to be a Horizon person who presented. And so that's great clarification to have.
Yeah. And so that Horizon person presented to the principals, and we all kind of like you do when you go to Barnes and Noble, right? There's the table at the front and you go, ooh, bestsellers. And we thumb through them. And then we have the magazine where you look through and go, ooh, there's some more titles. Fantastic. And the Scholastic Net magazine comes out and you're like, ooh. And so we had this extra money in addition to our library money. And then we started saying, let's buy books so that kids can see themselves in their books. And to be clear, this particular book came from home. And we're going to hear from Assistant Superintendent Bushnell about policies that we can put in place that will help clear up that muddy water that we got into. And so that I think that helps.
And so in no way were these books required for each school to get. It was just saying, this is some suggestions on diversity that you can put in your schools to help our students, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
When I go to my Title I meetings, when I go to my early literacy meetings, I mean, there are books that are shared and lists that are shared. Ooh, try this list, try this list, try this young author's list, try this list. And we share those around and say, hey, this is a great resource, right? So no, there was not a requirement. This was it would be akin to going to the book fair and perusing the book fair list and going, ooh. So
that was actually the example I was thinking, walking into the book fair. And then if you're kids book nerds, like most of us are,
right,
you walk out a lot poorer than you started.
Boy, and no kidding at the book fair. But the good news is that goes right back to the school, right?
So, and I don't know that this really matters or not one way or the other, but I think it has been questioned and asked, so I'm going to ask it. Was Call Me Max part of that book bundle? Was it on any of the lists of our book bundles?
Unequivocally, no, it was not on the book bundle list. That book came from home by a student.
Because we've heard that it was on a list, it wasn't on a list. We just want to find out the truth that it was not on any of the lists. It came from home.
It was not on any list. Thank you.
And I'm just saying it should be. We don't know. It just wasn't.
So again, clarification, because that has been in the mud for sure. I think we go back to maybe what Ms. Anderson said. There were some emails with contrary information. And so that's where the confusion lies, and whether what Ms. Anderson said was her honest take was that she was trying to figure things out as things happened. And so, but
and I can tell you as a school administrator, I can admire Mrs. Anderson and the vice principal's position, that as you're trying to find out that information and it's coming at you and you're trying to investigate while also trying to respond in a timely manner, you also, in trying to protect the child, in trying to protect that family, and also trying to protect your teacher, right? You don't want to throw anybody under the bus. And as the administrator, you fall on the sword, right? You say, that was my fault. I will take the ownership of that. And so in doing that, it was mishandled. And they have owned that. They own that and say, we didn't handle that appropriately. On the flip side of that, what Mrs. Anderson has shared and what she didn't share publicly is that particular student, while mishandled and the book read or not read and whatever opinions we might have of that, did say that child that's in that classroom is thriving. He feels validated. He feels safe with his peers. He feels like a contributing member of that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what that means in some of the data stuff that Robin and I are going to talk about. So, it happened. It was mishandled. We have owned that. And there's a lot of reasons why, wrong or right. I think they impulsively did the thing that they think that was right, when you're trying to protect the student and trying to protect the teacher and trying to gather the information, and it happened fast. We own it.
And the other thing for clarification is, I know at one other particular school, the word was out that it was at that school. My understanding is the principal at that school has looked through her PD records, or sorry, that's professional development, but looked through all her records and can't find it specifically mentioned. But now when you mention that you're getting list here and list here and list there, titles, names are probably all over a teacher's brain, all over. So, but just to clarify, as far as our principals at other schools, that book wasn't in their school either, as far as they know, to the best of their knowledge.
The principals all checked their schools, and they did not have that title in their schools under any inventory list that they had, nor were they on their shelves, and it was not part of any books that they had purchased this financial year.
Right. And I'm with Cammie, not saying the book yes or no, just to clarify that we've checked with all our principals to see where we're at on that. And
okay, Darren, I think I have a couple other questions related to the presentation.
Yes.
At I believe it was the Pride Center.
Yes.
You were invited by the Pride Center to come and present?
That's correct. One of our council members works with the Pride Center in conjunction with them, and there was a conference for educators, and they asked us to present and about how our equity council was formed so that other educators across the state could have an opportunity to listen to the work we were doing.
Okay. Do we get asked to present at other professional programs or entities?
I would say that different educators and individuals have been asked to present at different conferences at numerous times. I'm sure Missy or Robin or different people or educators within the school could be asked to present at a number of conferences depending on their background and knowledge and skill levels and the associations they're part of. So it's pretty regular for educators to present at educational conferences. It's nothing out of the norm.
Okay. And when that happens, it's not something we publicly announce to you don't need the board's approval. We don't need any kind of endorsement prior to those taking place. It's pretty standard that that does not have to happen.
Correct. Yes.
Any other questions? Go ahead and make sure you unmute, or can somebody help unmute Glow?
I think it started in the elementary school, but I haven't heard much information from junior high and high schools and parents at those schools, and they're concerned. And I'm wondering, are the principals in our junior high school and high school, have they had problems as well?
Problems in what sense?
Having books in their school that they don't think should be in their school.
I would probably defer to Director Williams as far as our book review at the secondary level, just because I'm not as familiar with the process. I can speak for our council members that we had secondary individuals, but Director Williams, I think I'll defer to you on that one.
So we also have addressed the issue of having diverse books in our schools, and our librarians actually have taken on the Diverse Book Challenge, which with the Diverse Book Challenge, if you want to go to Riverview and go to the library site, you can see the way that it is addressed and challenged for the students, where they have different categories and they have a book of lists that they can choose from. And those books cover a range of issues with the diverse books issues. With that being said, we also have at least once a year, if not multiple times a year, that we do follow district policy for selecting books for our classrooms. And within those classrooms, those are the books that are the novels that are required that every student reads. In addition to that, each of our teachers have their own class libraries, and oftentimes they will give students literature choices that they can use as they read a book, that they can augment that with a similar book. And the Holocaust unit would be an example of that, that they have the typical book that they read, and then they'll have 4 or 5 other books that may be similar or that speak to something that's happening in the 2000s versus in the 1920s. Now, with those books, we've been very clear that they publish to parents ahead of time what those book choices will be for students. And in there, they will note if there's something that may be objectionable for that family to consider. And they also give a link to a site called Common Sense so that parents can research that further. And then again, as the students have that self-selected literature, hopefully if families and parents and kids have talked about it, they have that opportunity. We have on occasion have had families or students start reading a book and then decide that it's objectionable once they get into that. And again, our staff has been counseled, and I believe that they're following through with working with parents and students on how to make another choice that doesn't give them a consequence or leave them feeling like they have to read a whole nother book. So we do occasionally have issues, but we really do feel like that between our book adoption policy and the review that happens there, along with then the publication to parents about those books, that's how we've addressed it.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Director Dean?
I don't see Elizabeth's picture, but Board Member Payne, do you have any questions or comments?
Sorry, there's a reason you don't see my.
Oh, sorry.
I'm feeling so terrible. I didn't want you all to see me, so I'm going to turn back off the video, but I am here.
I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond or ask any questions.
I think all of the questions that I've had have already been addressed, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We will move now to clarification on the memorandums.
And that will also be from myself. So thank you for letting me explain a little bit about the Equity Council. I just want to let the board know that we have some really fine educators in this district that care deeply about students and families and colleagues. So I'd like to talk about the clarification on the memorandums. And as the board, you're fairly aware of this. So this will just hopefully kind of refresh your memories, and then absolutely willing to entertain the discussion and questions that we need to. So a clarification on the memorandums. On August 25th, 2020, a memorandum was sent out to all employees about First Amendment and political speech issues. This was sent out to reinforce what is in Utah Administrative Code about the Utah Professional Educator Standards. It states in part that educators may not promote a personal opinion, personal issues, or political positions as part of the instructional process in a manner inconsistent with law. 2 days later, on August 27th, 2020, an addendum memorandum was sent out to all employees that sought to clarify what constitutes political speech. This addendum was immediately rescinded as many employees expressed concerns over what the district had delineated as political speech. Employees were also notified that the district would provide additional guidance at a later date. At this point in time, members from the district's Equity Council offered to help in crafting a new memorandum. After many hours of work and after a thorough review by the district's administration and the school board in a public meeting, a new memorandum was sent to all employees on November 23rd, 2020. This memorandum was not meant to replace the first memorandum on First Amendment and political speech. Rather, this memorandum was additional guidance and clarification from the district to our employees. This memorandum served to let our employees know that they are valued and that the Murray City School District is committed to equity for all. So that's about as brief as I can make it without reading all three memorandums.
Thank you. Do we have questions associated with the memorandums? Off mute.
I just wanted to point out, or just, how do I, in asking our questions about the memorandums in board meeting, there was a feeling that we were being ignorant, I guess, as board members. And I just wanted to clarify that a lot of times as a board, we maybe are asking a question that we're asking for the people to hear the answer, or it's not our personal feelings. It's, hey, like, what if the public thought this? What if the public thought that? How would we answer that? And so I was a little taken back that it was seen as, as us not trying to understand. So I just kind of wanted to make a statement on that. But I also wanted to state that when we got when the third memorandum, or which now I guess we shouldn't even call the third memorandum the way that sounds, came out, I had my lens kind of like on like different cultures and races is what we were looking. And I was touched and blown away by how many of our teachers who are LGBTQ contacted us and said, this makes me feel safer in my school. And it came from a different direction than who I thought it was going to be, who I thought maybe we were reaching out to the most. And it was really powerful to hear those messages that, hey, that made me feel better about being me in Murray School District. And I won't forget that. And I have to acknowledge that. So,
yeah. And I can certainly understand, because when the second memorandum went out, and the reason it was immediately rescinded was our emails and our phones blew up. And we had taken apart a safety net for our employees, and we knew it. And we had to repair that. And that, when that third memorandum went out, then we got that. I feel safe. I feel safe to work in this community. I feel safe and I feel included. And that was our aim, is to have that inclusivity and that we are Murray. So.
I'm sorry, guys, this computer thing. Maybe we can talk a little bit of clarification for the public, mostly of the last part of the last paragraph in the third memorandum, and maybe what direction we were going with that, or the group was going with that. What were the ideas and thoughts behind that section?
So let me go ahead and read it, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the last paragraph of the memo says, Murray City School District supports and encourages all educators to center equity in their daily teaching. Some examples include equity-based curriculum, conversations, dialogue, and displays that emphasize the dismantling of individual and systemic barriers to student achievement. We are committed to prioritizing equity in Murray City School District. We are Murray, every one of us. Boy, that's pretty overarching to say, what were we going for? I think there were a lot of things that were being going for, that every child, every staff member is included, that if I have a discussion about something, about a diverse topic, it's going to be okay. If a child in my classroom brings up racism or LGBTQ, how do I handle that? How do I handle these topics that these children come to our classrooms every day with, and have these questions, and our employees, and that safety, and that it's okay to have these conversations. And our educators, they know their bounds. They are instructed, they're required every year to sign off on the Utah Educator Professional Ethics Standards. They are hyper aware of what they say and their influence on children. And they want to make sure that everyone has a place and that everyone feels part of it. That's where I get it. I mean, you can parse words and say, no, this means that or means that, but that's really the intent.
And if I may, I think you'll hear more about what that means in our presentation as well. So I want to put a pin in that as well, because I think we'll reference back to that. In fact, Darren, when you're done with that memo, if I can borrow it for a second, that paragraph, thanks.
Any additional questions for the clarification memorandums? Okay. I think we reserve the right that if we come up with another question and we need to go circle back, because there's a lot of information, we may do so. But so just because we've gone past it doesn't mean we may not go back to it as we try to get all clarity with this. Educational leadership strand 7.
I'm the one that's harassing you guys about unmuting. Sorry. That's a perfect segue to our presentation. Superintendent, can you see the presentation screen? Okay, great. I am going to minimize that so that I can see it. Robin and I are going to be Oh, that's like, are you unmuted? We're going to have to just, there we go. So Robin and I have the opportunity to share with you kind of the why behind all of this, kind of this hurricane of activity that's happening. So if you'll bear with us, I think we're going to lay out pretty, maybe not succinctly, but not long-winded, I promise. But there is a lot that we're going to share with you. And I think it's going to be very educational, both for our board, but also for our public as well. So with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and get on into it with a definition of equity and this whole idea of equality and equity and what it really means. Equity is a misunderstanding, I believe. In light of recent events, it is misunderstood to be synonymous with perhaps racism. It may be synonymous with gender. It might be synonymous with, say, quotas. It might even be synonymous with sex education or reading of books. But really, it has everything to do with access and opportunity. Evidenced in this picture, you can see in the first image, it is assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports and they are being treated equally. In the second image, individuals are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. They are being treated equitably, which is great, right? Everybody can see the game. But in the final picture, in the third image, all three can see the game without any supports or accommodations. We have removed the systemic barriers that are preventing them from being able to see the game. In their book, Excellence Through Equity by Alan Blankenstein and Pedro Noguera, they state, in education circles, the word equity is often controversial and very confusing. Such responses tend to occur because when the term equity is raised, it often evokes a zero-sum scenario, a perception that if we do more for those who are disadvantaged, it means there will be less for the advantaged. When this occurs and the pursuit of equity is subverted by the assumption that there must be winners and losers, rarely is any progress made. We are striving for a community that overcomes an impasse and serves to remove barriers for all learners, which personifies the very essence of We Are Murray. So our teaching and learning department, oh, that's you, sorry.
So just as a reminder, and for parents who may not know the function of the teaching and learning department, we work on three core areas, which are curriculum, which is what we teach, instruction, how we teach, and assessment, which is how we know how our students are learning. In this support, we sponsor, we support, we learn from, and we teach our administrators, our teachers, counselors, and our support staff.
We didn't plan for the mute button. In supporting all of our teachers, our administrators and district leaders all have to follow the Utah Educational Leader Strands and leadership standards. And it is important to highlight the standards today. Strand number 7 asks us to identify and honor each student and promote their well-being. This speaks highly to developing relationships with all students in our charge. I'm going to go through each of those standards and just simply highlight each of these. So in Strand 7, in Standard 7.1, each student gets to be known, accepted, valued, trusted, and respected. And nothing is more evidence than what Mrs. Anderson expressed tonight with that one particular student. Standard 7.2, equitable access to effective teachers, to effective learning opportunities, equitable access to academic and social support. Our principals have to ensure that every student gets that. To equitably distribute and target resources, that all students have access to that all of our teachers have equitable access to those resources as well. To address student behavior in a positive, equitable, and unbiased manner, that all students are going to be treated the same way, that we have systems in place that will be addressed equitably. That we address matters of equity and cultural responsiveness. And finally, that we promote the preparation of students to live productively in and positively contribute to society. That's just one of many standards that our principals have to attack and develop. And all of those, if you notice, they're equitable or equity or equality was mentioned about 7 times just in those descriptions of those standards.
Equally are the Utah Effective Teaching Standards that apply to each of our classroom teachers. And their standards also outline what effective teaching and learning looks like in the Utah public education system. As we also address those with our students, with our teachers, I would like to highlight that one of theirs, which is Standard 3, indicates that they collaborate with students to establish a positive learning climate of openness, respectful interactions, support, and inquiry. Standard 7 addresses instructional strategies, which highlights the range of developmentally, culturally, and linguistically appropriate instructional strategies. Additionally, using resources to adapt instruction and varies his or her role to meet the needs of individuals and a group of learners.
What you're looking at here now, am I unmuted? Okay, I kept myself open. What you're looking at here is called the PCBL framework, because we don't have enough acronyms. We are adding another one: personalized and competency-based learning. So at the end of the K-12 experience, that portrait of a graduate is what we will aspire to for all of our students, right? Hardworking, resilient learners, civic education, all of those things. But the vehicle by which we get there is these 6 puzzle pieces, if you will: student agency, demonstrated competency and assessment, customized support, purpose and vision, equity, and social and emotional learning. And they've developed this framework in Utah to support teachers, students, and leaders in their quest to fulfill that portrait of a graduate. So these 6 puzzle pieces, one of which is equity and another social and emotional learning, are integral parts of this framework. And so we're going to look at much of what you see here is repeated from the leadership standards and the teacher standards, including these promising practices on the right-hand column that teachers and students would engage in the classroom. So you look here at the definition of equity from the State Office of Education. Again, it's about the equitable distribution of resources for those students, and then social and emotional learning as well. So the cultural and relationships within a classroom are critical for teachers to cultivate in order for learning to happen at high levels. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a popular motivational theory that is widely referred to in education circles. In this theory, Abraham Maslow suggested that before individuals meet their full potential, they need to satisfy a series of needs. Is the student getting all of their physical needs met? These basic needs include food, water, sleep, oxygen, and warmth. How safe do they feel in our classrooms? Do all students have a feeling of belonging in our classroom? Does each student feel that they belong to a group? Do they have strong relationships with their peers? The next stage is esteem. Do all students feel good about themselves? Are we giving them feedback to support their self-esteem? And do they believe that their peers think positively about them? All of those things are incorporated into our curriculum and our frameworks.
And I think it's important, before we move to a section and talking about our data in Murray, I think it's very important to pause on those 2 concepts of equity and our social emotional learning of our students. And as you think about where we were on March 12th and where we came back in August before we started school, we had a return to school like none other with COVID. And we knew that there had been kids that had gone home on March 12th and hadn't opened up their Chromebooks to study. We knew that there were kids and families that were suffering, and they still may be suffering the hardships of COVID-19. And we think it's really important to pause on this moment to talk about exactly what Missy just lined out, in that we need our students to be in a space where they feel safe, they feel okay, they feel all of those connections before they're going to be able to adequately learn. And again, we have known that before COVID. We knew that that was something we needed to address, but this time during the pandemic, it's been like none other that we've had to say, are the kids okay? And as we've moved forward our year, that idea of inspiring hope and resilience, that idea of perseverance has become paramount in our conversations, and our teachers and our administrators have been very committed to making sure that we're okay and that we have hope for our students. So with that being said, we do want to talk about the data in our district. We are very proud of We Are Murray, and we are very proud of all we accomplish. We also are very proud of what the teachers are taking on and the fact that they are so willing to figure out how to best serve all of their students. So when we talk tonight about our data, we need to say that it's a reality. It's a picture that we work with, but we also want to accent the point that our teachers are very much people who want to build efficacy and consistently ask us, what can we do? What can we do to make that happen? So the first one that we will start with is and I'm out of order, sorry, is our graduation data. And when we look at that data, again, our data speaks to the disparity of some of our students' experiences and opportunities within our schools. Some of the data requires us to immediately act and provide a plan to the state or to the federal government on how we might respond. Some of our funding also requires that we show how we're addressing this data. However, again, I want to come back to the point to emphasize that our teachers' levels of professionalism and care is the strongest driving force as we look at data and we ask ourselves what we can do for our students. As you look at the overall graduation rate, in 2020, it was 80%. But if you look at the subcategories, we have some work to do when we look at our groups with 53.6% of our African-American students graduating, only 66.7% of the economically disadvantaged, 63.6% of our ESL, and 54% of our kids with disabilities. We also would provide you with opportunity to look at a graph over time, and some years have been worse. I'm happy to report that 2020 was better than 2017, but we still know that we have work to do to get our students to a place of graduating. I would also highlight for you our SHARP and CASE data, and there is a lot of information that you can dive into with this. Both of those are student reports of the data, and they do talk about the risky behaviors and the social emotional feelings that they have. They also ask questions about bullying and how safe they feel at school. I've chosen to highlight for you just a couple of those graphs that are contained within the CASE data, and would tell you that it is a target for us to change where it says at school, all students are treated the same, regardless of where they came from. Only 56% of our students agreed on that. I will highlight for you that the two CASE surveys that you see in front of you tonight are from just one school. And we did that they didn't give us whole district data, they gave it by school. There is a pattern that we see. The elementary students are much more optimistic, and it goes down as they go up in our grades. Very much is a concern for us as we look at our adolescent learners and ask ourselves, why are they not coming to school? Why are they not passing their classes, and are they okay? How do we engage them? And again, we've got a lot of data contained within the CASE report and the SHARP data that give us pause and give us concern. As you go on to the school connectedness with the CASE data, again, as you look at those numbers of students reporting that they enjoy coming to school, that they're proud to be a student at their school, or they feel like they belong at their school, these are opportunities for growth and things that we are discussing as a staff. The SHARP data again, there's a lot of information on there, but it is a survey that goes to the kids in 6th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. And if you look at this particular graph, which talks about the suicide-related indicators, is disheartening and it is frightening. And I would say it is a place that we can have a goal to set to make sure that our kids are feeling connected, and that when they are feeling lonely or depressed or bullied, that we have opportunities for them and places to go. And the last SHARP survey data that I shared with you talks about during the last 12 months, what has happened to the student as far as feeling safe and whether or not they've been bullied or been threatened in various ways. And with that, a challenge that we've given to our faculties is just, if you look at the state data and the fact that we are above the state data on all of that, we would really like to not be above the average. We would like to have an environment that feels safe and welcoming for all. With the next piece of data, this comes from surveys that have been given to our students these past few months for accreditation. And the advanced ed survey that just came, almost 800 students responded. They were asked to use the top 4 words to describe how they were feeling at that point in time. And they were given a great big list, some of the words very positive, and some of the words not so positive. Top 4 words that were chosen by our students were bored, pressured, confused, and tired. And of those 799 respondents, only 21% reported feeling happy. Another student survey that was given in January of 2021 had 115 responses. And with that, again, something that we are talking about is the fact that 38.3% said that they have had suicidal thoughts, and another 20.9% preferred not to tell us. And 57.4% reported being tired, stressed, and also depressed. So
Mute. Okay. So I get to chat with you about our Rise and Aspire data. And I always have a graph for you, friends. So this is our district demographic profile, okay? This is our percent of female and male. You see our demographic profile of African American and Black, and this is over the blue. The light blue is 2017-18, 18-19 in purple, and then the darker blue is 19-20. Okay, so you can see that about 20% of our student body in all of District K through 12 is 21%, 65-ish% is white. We do have 36% of our student body that is economically disadvantaged, 10% English language learners. Students with disability is at about 15%. We have 6% that are refugee and immigrant, and 1% of our student body that is homeless, which is 1% too many. When you look at this with students with disabilities, and we look at this just raw data, we have about 15% of our student body that is identified as students with disability. And the reason I'm showing you this graph is to show you how disproportionately our Hispanic students are identified as students with disabilities. If I go back to this graph, if we go back to this graph, our Hispanic students are at 20%, but they are over-identified proportionately as a student with disability. Chronically absent, these are the students that are chronically absent. The good news is that we have 86% of our students are not chronically absent, but of those 14%, our Hispanic population is more chronically absent. And also those that are chronically absent are also those that are economically disadvantaged, as well as our students with disabilities are the ones that end up being chronically absent as well. Yeah. Our advanced courses, okay? If we look at this, so you have in the first few columns, you have the students that are registered for secondary math. We don't have an IB program, International Baccalaureate. And these are students that are taking advanced placement courses and concurrent enrollment. But then I look at this one column, it's about 5 over, it says all students in IB, AP, and concurrent enrollment courses. That's about 24% of our student body in secondary, okay? Of those students, these are the demographic profile of those students. So of those students, we don't have a very high representation of students that are American Indian or African American, only 8% of those students that are registered. We have 17% of those students that are registered for advanced courses are Hispanic. 13% of those students that are registered are economically disadvantaged. 7% are students with disabilities. So I put those red bracketed spaces to show the gap. And that's the study of equity. That's what we have to remove, those barriers. Remember that very first slide with the little box and the kids? What we want to do first is get the boxes, right? But then what we want to do second is remove the boxes and remove the fence so that more kids are able to take and access these advanced courses, because there are economically disadvantaged students that are able and willing and capable of taking our AP classes. Why are they not accessing those? What's the barrier? We need to figure that out. We need to find out why. So this is our math proficiency, K-12. Okay, so we don't have 1920 data. I can't imagine why. It was something about a global pandemic or something. I don't know if you remember. So we didn't have testing data for that. But our overall proficiency for math was 44% last year, 48% the year before that. But look at the disparity in proficiency when we look at it by demographic profile. 24% for our Hispanic students. Look at our ELL learners and our students with disabilities and our economically disadvantaged students. Notice our white students are above the overall percentage. Remember what we said at the beginning about a zero-sum difference. Again, language arts proficiency, same graph. And our science proficiency. Robin's going to talk about TSI, and then we are going to share with you some awesome stuff and the why and the good work that we've done to help solve and remove some of those barriers, because this isn't all bad news. We've got work to do, and this is hard work. TSI.
Thank you, Missy. We have a couple of designations that we are working with from the state level. And one of those you'll hear us reference, and is TSI, which actually stands for Targeted Support and Improvement School Designation. With that designation, it is centered on looking at several things. At the high school level, they look at the students' growth on the end of level assessments. They also look at the quartile growth, which means if they moved from one level to the next. So they are getting points in both of those arenas. They look at ACT scores, the graduation percentage, and as they look at that for the high school, they then rank order all of the schools. If you also look at the pie for the middle school and elementary, they are looking at not only proficiency, but also the growth and the growth of the lowest 25%. And I would highlight for you that both elementary, junior high, and the high school, they are also doing points for our ESL students who take the WIDA test. And that is how much they grow towards that language proficiency over time. When you have a school that is designated TSI, it is because they are at the bottom 5% for 2 years in a row. And when they say bottom 5%, they designate which areas they did not meet those growth targets. And we have 4 of our schools who have been designated as TSI schools. And 2 of those schools are because of the progress or the scores of our special ed students and our ESL students. A similar piece of data that needs to be shared with you is with our equal opportunity schools, which is oftentimes also referred to as the enhancement for accelerated students. With this particular measurement and goal that is set by the state, they are looking for opportunities or for evidence of access that we are providing to all of our students. And what I would highlight for you there is that we have a disproportionate enrollment in all 3 areas of gifted, our AP programs, and our concurrent. And those levels that they are looking at are the students for free or reduced lunch, minority students, our ELL students, and our special education students. The idea there is that if you have 30% of your population who are Hispanic students, you should also see a similar percentage in your AP programs. And they then look at the disparity between that and ask us to set goals that are centered on us working as an entity to identify systemically what might be happening to keep those students from participating in those programs. A little bit more on the gifted ed data. Right now, we have of those participants, 94% of those students are not economically disadvantaged. The district demographic is 64%, which means there's a disparity of 30%. So only 6% of our current gifted students come from economically disadvantaged families. In a similar fashion, only 11% of our gifted students are considered minority students. In our advanced placement programs, 19% of the students are coming from economically disadvantaged families, and only 22% of our AP students are minority students. Concurrent is very similar, with 17% coming from economically disadvantaged and 19% who are minority. Nope, it's me. We wanted to share with you just some of the things that have been happening recently in the news that are very relevant for the work that we are also undertaking in the Murray City School District. The first one I'd like to highlight for you is the American Pediatric Association. I would highlight that they have declared racism as a public health crisis. And they speak to the ways that racism hurts the children across America. And they also speak to the effects that COVID-19 have had on our minority children. Go ahead. They, in this article that is from Harvard Health, in speaking about the American Pediatric Association, have come together to list the action steps that pediatricians can take across the country for training not only of their doctors, but of their staffs that can help mitigate the harm that has happened to students and to children. And I would highlight for you the list that they came up because it's very similar to the action steps that we have talked about in Murray District. And that is taking a hard look at ourselves, taking stock of our beliefs and our biases and working to change those. Again, as you flow through that list that the American Pediatrics shared, each and every one of those questions are similar questions that we have asked ourselves as educators. I would highlight for you that just yesterday, our Utah House Committee sent to the floor a unanimous recommendation to declare racism a public health crisis.
Likewise, the Utah Board of Education also denounced racism in a very public forum. I'm sure you've all read this resolution, and also reiterated their official position on issues, especially after a whole lot of social media firestorms that were taking place. We are accountable for educating all learners to high academic standards and outcomes, regardless of differing characteristics. And you'll see in front of you a document from the IDRA, which identifies 6 goals. And if you notice, it's all about opportunity. It's all about access. It's all about making sure that we have high outcomes for all students, and making sure that inclusion is part of that goal as well. So we do have some celebrations, and Robin and I are going to share those with you. Is it me first? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so a couple of things that we've done to help close those gaps that we just shared with you, because some of those things are fairly disheartening and discouraging, right? Like we look at that data and it's discouraging. So we did get that grant to diversify our books. We have invited in lots of folks to come in and speak to our teachers and provide professional learning experiences. Several to teach our teachers about academic language acquisition to help that ELL gap. Robin hosted some ELL Learner Wednesday trainings. She looks at ELL data with our principals and coaches frequently. Dr. David Parker came and did he did a kickoff with all of our educators, if you remember that. And then the high school and junior highs wanted him for more, and they couldn't get enough of him, and asked him to come to breakouts as they talked about having an inclusive classroom environment. And then we have oodles of book studies happening in our schools all the time on positive environments, trauma-based education, on check-in, check-outs, on behavior supports. We were able to get the second step curriculum throughout all of our elementaries, as well as the bullyology curriculum in all of our elementaries, which is huge to have those SEL supports, those social and emotional learning supports that we talked about, especially in light of all of that Casey survey data that we just talked about. That was in direct response to that. Robin?
And just continuing the work, presentations on unprecedented school supports, which again have been designed to help mitigate the harm and build hope with our students in relation to COVID and the learning loss that may have happened. We've had multiple trainings with our teachers on restorative justice, and instead of being absolutely punitive with students, how to build and teach and help kids learn from their mistakes and move on to a better community. We've addressed the idea with our gifted and talented students that we can do this in a way that gets after all of our students, regardless of income or language. And this year, we're really proud to report that our kindergarten students, all of our students were assessed, and they were assessed at their home schools. And we're really excited about the results of that. And in fact, I'm super happy to report to you that Missy and her team have also looked at a way to identify our language learners whose growth levels are such that do you want to jump in? Because I'm going to put you this one.
No, it's cool. So we actually looked at all of our students and their WIDA scores and identified any students that made twice the growth level on their composite score that the state expects, and we're identifying them as gifted in language development, and we're going to service them through the gifted program as well, which is huge. That just happened today. I didn't even tell you about it, boss. Go ahead.
And then going on with that, again, we have talked a lot about how do we keep families involved and informed. And one of the things that we've shifted this year is the use of Parent Square and messaging. And many of you know that we've even tackled with Canvas and grading, how do we better talk to our parents? And we've implemented our parent university and the ability for parents to really look inside of those grades. We also are very proud of the work that's been done in our district with hotspots and data gateways to ensure internet connectivity in ways that make sense and make sure that all students are able to access. We've implemented read and write software, which gives all students the ability to highlight words, to have words translated, and to make things more readable and understandable, whether they are an ELL special ed student or just a student who benefits from seeing and hearing things multiple times. We also have predictive text and scaffolded supports for learners. We are very proud of our number of our teachers who are teaching social studies that have been a part of programs that are encouraging civic discourse and how to have hard conversations or debates with each other and remain in a respectful community within your school and within your classroom. When we asked Carol Anderson to share out all of the workshops, book studies that she's done, it was too big for our little flow chart here, but she gave some of those with the PD on tough kids, behavior interventions, again, multiple opportunities with SEL and social justice. And then I would like to pause for just a minute to talk about the work that has been happening since this summer. And again, I would remind everyone of the impact of COVID and the social unrest that has been happening in our country. And we are very proud of the work that our community and our teachers have committed to. We started on July 29th with 12 panelists in an unscripted conversation who had stories to share about their experiences in our community. And teachers wrote responses to that. And if you remember as a board, those responses were shared with you. I don't know if you had opportunity to look at those, but 203 teachers attended and participated in that conversation and had heartfelt responses that centered on how do we make a difference with the social unrest that's happening. We continued that training with Listening with Care, with teacher training with Michelle Loveday, Dr. Jackie Thompson, and Dr. David Dominguez. We also had Listening with Care training that included some of you as school board members and all of our administrators with Dr. Mahan Reynolds and Ms. Arnetsky. Our Equity Council's work and direction is one that we also very much appreciate as they continue to ask the question about creating an inclusive community for all. And I also would highlight for us the Equity Council presentations to you as a school board with many of our members of the community, including Dr. Mahan Reynolds, Dr. Thompson, and Amanda Darrow. I think it's really important at this point to take a breath and to highlight that our teachers are listening and our teachers care. I think it's important to note that we have a culture where our teachers, when they encounter issues like the data we shared with you, or with a personal situation where they're not sure how to respond, they are consistently demonstrating problem-solving skills. They are consistently reaching out and saying, how might we do this differently? I will share with you that tonight we have a difficult conversation that was happening, a fight that was happening between faculty 2 weeks ago. And that disagreement has now moved to a teacher saying, I think we want to study this. Can we do this as professional development? And tonight they are participating in a webinar with 2 authors of a book about adolescent female issues. They then intend to read the book, and then they intend to have a discussion about the book. The teacher started with one idea and thought a couple of her friends would join her. Almost the entire faculty at one of our junior highs are participating. And we opened that up to other secondary teachers. And last time I looked, she had 32 people who were giving up a Thursday night. They're not getting paid, but they very much want to talk about adolescent female issues. And my hat's off to our entire faculty, to the team that I get to work with, to our administrators, that we have this can-do, this approach, this problem solving that says, we're here, we want to make a difference, and we care very much about this gap. We're not afraid of being uncomfortable. We're not afraid of exposing our own weaknesses and not knowing necessarily what the answer is, but in being very committed to pursuing how to do this so that all of our employees and all of our students feel safe, feel valued, and can actualize as learners within this environment. Missy?
Yep, last slide, I promise. Our Equity Council was empowered to make this statement, and the bullets that you are now looking at represent a community committed to our students. And now you understand why this statement was written and the passion with which it was written. Equity work is hard. It's uncomfortable work. They are hard conversations to have, but they are rewarding. This is the right work, and I am so proud to lock arms with educators and parents in this amazing district to engage in this work on behalf of students. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing all of the concerns from citizens, and thank you for doing what is in the best interest of student learning. Tonight, we will talk about a framework for equity, and I hope that all of this helps you to understand the why behind why we committed to equity work.